Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. Good to have you with us on this Friday. We start with the latest on that record-breaking extreme weather that is ravaging the U.S. from coast to coast. More than 92 million Americans are under heat alerts with triple-digit heat indices as far north as Maine, where one town had to issue an excessive heat warning this week for the first time ever. Out west, crews in 9 states are fighting several active wildfires. One of the worst is in New Mexico, where at least 2 people have died. President Biden has issued a disaster declaration for southern parts of the state. Officials there say that heavy rain and flash flooding are making it even harder to contain the flames. All this unfolding as we are watching 2 potential tropical disturbances in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Our team is tracking all this weather. NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman is standing by with our weekend forecast. But we start with NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin, who's on the ground in Watauga, New York.
Hey there, millions of Americans are waking up once again to scorching temps. Folks heading out to beaches such as this one to try and beat the heat. Tens of millions of Americans waking up this morning from coast to coast under heat alerts. We're expecting more sizzling temperatures in the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic. We're also seeing those wildfires out in New Mexico, killing at least 2, devastating communities, flooding continuing out in Texas, despite the fact that Tropical Storm Alberto is long gone. And get this, so far this year, there have been more than 12,000 record highs recorded at weather stations across the country, and this is showing no signs of slowing down, even though the summer has just begun. They're predicting for the month of July above average temps for the entire country. This is looking like it's going to be a summer of extremes. Back to you.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. So let's talk more about what we can expect this weekend and beyond. Time for your morning news now. Weather meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here with the forecast. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. And we're going to continue to bake today and through the weekend. D.C. could be in the triple digits by this weekend, feeling much warmer than that. So as mentioned earlier, 92 million people across the country under heat alerts. That includes the West now. In the East, we're looking at 64 million. That includes the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and then expanding into the Mid-Atlantic as we go throughout the weekend here. Major cities like Columbus, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Hartford, New York City. Under heat alerts, we do have a heat warning for Pittsburgh, also Fort Wayne, a heat watch for Philadelphia, and also D.C. Wait till you see these numbers in D.C. this weekend. You're going to want to find some indoor activities. So we're sweltering still. We're looking at temperatures well into the 90s, record-breaking territory, not only daytime highs, but nighttime lows, and also most likely monthly records as well. We're looking at temperatures in the 90s today. Nashville, we're looking at 96. You factor in that humidity. That's a really important number. That's what our body perceives as a temperature. So it's going to respond to that. It will feel like 99 in Nashville, feeling like 96 in St. Louis. 102 is what it's going to feel like in St. Louis. And then as we head further to the Mid-Atlantic, D.C., 97 will be the heat index in New York City on this Friday. Kicking off the weekend, we're looking at 96 degrees as a heat index. The air temperature right around 93 degrees. Another hot one today. You want to find those cooling centers, hydrate, all the tips we've been giving all week long. And again, this really adds up as the days go on. So we're not getting that relief at night either. The heat does continue tomorrow. Take a look at Baltimore, 98 degrees, feeling more like 105, feeling like 103 in Richmond. You get the idea. A lot of spots will be feeling like the triple digits, even air temperatures near the triple digits in Nashville, 97, 95 in Lexington. It's going to be another warm one in Chicago, temperatures near the mid-90s, 93 and 95 in Toledo. Then as we go throughout the rest of the weekend into early next week, we trend a little cooler, but that word cooler, I mean, we're still in the upper 80s, low 90s in many spots, but D.C. by Sunday could hit 100 degrees again. We're forecasting 99, but still in the mid-90s Monday and Tuesday. Those are the air temperatures, not with the heat index involved. Chicago, we're into the 80s on Sunday and Monday, so that's a little bit better. Same story in Buffalo. Nice change there because we have a front that's kind of lingering right there into New England, so a big reprieve for them. They were so warm, especially in Bangor, Maine. The past couple of days are getting a break today with temperatures in the 80s. Buffalo by Monday, 78 degrees. Unfortunately, that cold front doesn't sink enough south, and we're looking at really hot temperatures in the mid-Atlantic and also the Northeast. I have some more bad news for you. We're looking at July outlook, and it's looking hotter than average. So most likely June is going to end up very hot, above average, breaking records. And we're going to see that once again into July in portions of New England, the Northeast, the Ohio Valley, Midwest, into the Southeast. Hotter than average in the Southwest, the inner mountains as well. The Rockies, we're looking at at least the forecasted outlook for July, looking a little warmer than normal. So for today, that's going to be the big weather story once again. Also looking at lots of spots where we're looking at some moisture, some showers, some storms. Some could be on the severe side. So for today, we'll start in the northern plains, the upper Mississippi Valley, because we're looking at the chance for flooding rains. We're seeing that at this hour. I'll show you that in just a minute. We have a front that's draped right there. It's bringing those rains that are dropping 3 inches per hour, a lot of humidity in the air. A flood threat throughout portions of the Southwest. That's all due to a tropical disturbance. Same story in southern Texas. Not getting a break there. We're not expecting a whole lot of rain, but we had a whole lot of rain a couple days ago, and we're looking at additional rain with that Gulf disturbance. And then we have a disturbance in the Atlantic as well, and that's going to bring some tropical showers along the Carolina coast into portions of Florida. We'll see if those develop into any names or even further than where they are right now. But nonetheless, we're looking at some rain falling. Flood alerts right now, we're looking throughout portions of the upper Midwest, the plains as well. We do have some flash flood warnings. That means flash flooding is happening right now. So Eli into Chamberlain, Sioux Falls, you're seeing some really tough conditions right now. So be careful as you head out this morning. And again, these alerts same place through Saturday because that front kind of parks itself there. This is why we're looking at radar. We're looking at some rain in portions of the Southwest, also the Four Corners, looking towards the northern plains into the upper Midwest. We're looking at some lightning there as well. We do have a severe thunderstorm risk from the northern plains into the upper Midwest, the upper Mississippi Valley, 6 million people at risk. So, Joe, we're looking at that and then also looking at those tropical disturbances in the tropics. That could bring some moisture to Florida and also Texas.
All right, it's either rain or heat. Take your pick. Michelle, thank you so much. As his legal battles continue, former President Trump is turning his attention to Florida. That's where the classified documents case against him continues to be stalled thanks to a series of ongoing motions and hearings over legal issues. Now, in the latest attempt by Trump's legal team to get the case thrown out, they're arguing that Special Counsel Jack Smith's appointment to run the investigation violates the Constitution. We have NBC News senior national politics reporter John Allen joining us for a closer look at all this, along with NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, let's start with you. So Trump pleaded not guilty to these charges just over a year ago. It's no surprise he has been trying to delay all these legal proceedings as much as possible. But some of these issues that are coming up in this specific case, does it seem like they could have been disposed of much more quickly without day-long hearings?
Yes, and that is a fair criticism of the judge, that she's holding hearings on issues that another judge might have decided by simply a stroke of the pen in a matter of days, maybe even weeks. But that is the beauty of the Constitution. Federal judges are appointed for life, and they're given almost complete discretion as to how to manage their calendar and how to decide on things like motions and other issues before them, including whether or not to hold evidentiary hearings or not hold evidentiary hearings. Or, one of the things I think is a fair criticism, to have your lower magistrate judge help out. Aileen Cannon has not used her magistrate very much. I think that's a fair criticism as well. But that's the system we live in. We have district judges who have tremendous authority. It's fair to criticize one for moving slowly. Attorneys do it all the time. So that's what you may have here. Is it intentional by the defense? Well, their primary mission is to get the case thrown out, like every other defendant in the world. Is there a secondary benefit by delaying the case? Absolutely, because if it's delayed past the election, and specifically past inauguration, all federal cases against Trump, poof, go into the ether.
How unusual is it that we don't even have a trial date yet?
It is very unusual in federal court, but this is not the usual case. If this were a guns and drugs case, I'd say, yeah, this should be going to trial within 2 to 3 months. There should be a trial date set, and then if it's changed, you can reset that trial date, move it out 2 or 3 months, whatever the case may be. But this is a different case. So, too, is the January 6th case. They're all different. So you can't hold them to the ordinary timeline. Is Judge Cannon's approach causing delay? Is her refusal to set a trial date something that can be criticized? Absolutely. Would another federal judge set a trial date and then just move it as needed? That's what I think is the more common practice. But again, that is the discretion the Constitution and our system gives federal district court judges.
John, let's bring you in here. It is looking very unlikely this case will make it to court ahead of the November elections. Does it matter to voters, especially following the New York hush money trial? Do they seem to be paying attention to these criminal cases, and is it influencing them at all?
Well, I think certainly some of them are paying attention to the criminal cases, and it may influence some of them. This one is a federal case about the handling of classified documents, which is something that is very close to, very much a part of what a president of the United States does. It's also probably the one, Danny's the legal expert, but, from many of the lawyers I've spoken to, they think this is actually the most straightforward case in terms of Donald Trump had these documents, then refused to give them back. He's claiming that they effectively belong to him. But there's a lot of evidence that he both retained the documents and didn't give them back. So, I think the first point you made is probably the right one, Joe, which is it seems very unlikely that any of this is going to be resolved, at least in terms of the classified documents case, before the election. And to Danny's point, then if Trump wins, all the cases go into the ether. If Trump loses, then perhaps this is something that goes forward.
So, Danny, let's talk about a past case. Trump now filing another motion in New York. His legal team calling on Judge Engoron in the civil fraud case to recuse himself. This sounds strange to people because it already happened. All that's really left are the inevitable appeals. So what's going on here? What do they want?
This is a fascinating motion. The allegations are basically that while in the courthouse hallways, an attorney unconnected to the case, completely having nothing to do with any cases involving Trump, approached the judge and said effectively, hey, Judge, I want to make sure you get the law right in this Trump case. Now, one of two things could have happened. Either the judge said, thank you, but I got to go, which is probably what he should have done if this happened. And that might be what happened. But the attorney's also saying that they had something of a prolonged discussion about it, the facts, the issues, maybe they're in the hallway. If that happened, that is a cause for concern. But there's also a very strong likelihood, this happens to judges all the time, busybody attorneys come up with their opinions in the hallways, and he may have just said, yeah, thanks, got to go to lunch.
Of course, Trump assessed a $454 million penalty in that case. All right, John, while we have you, less than a week away from the first presidential debate, real quick, how are the candidates getting ready?
They're doing it a little bit differently, which is not terribly surprising because they've run against each other before and done things differently, and candidates tend to keep things the same. President Biden is going to be in Camp David for most of next week. He's going to surround himself with some of his top aides and perhaps even do full mock debates. Basically, you're going to see around him Anita Dunn, one of his top advisors, Mike Donnellan, Steve Ricchetti, former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who was co-chairman of his last campaign, is probably going to be there as well. But they're going to do a pretty formal debate structure. Trump, on the other hand, hates the idea of full mock debates. He doesn't. One of the things he doesn't like to do is preview his actual arguments. I think he believes that, according to people I've spoken to, have been in prep with him before, he really wants to make sure that when he says something on stage, it's the first time he said it. So these are going to be a little different, but he does sort of informal discussions with his aides, on the plane or when he's at his resort.
Very different approaches. A lot to cover. No one better to help us through than John Allen and Danny Savalos. Thank you both. Now, while the president prepares for next week's debate, his administration's disagreement with Israel over weapons continues to make headlines. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the U.S. has been withholding deliveries of weapons from Israel. The White House responded saying, quote, we genuinely do not know what he is talking about. This is just adding more tension to a relationship that was already getting strained. NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist joins us with the latest. So, Aaron, how has this new tension impacted the U.S.-Israel relationship and Israeli efforts to fight the war and get hostages out of Gaza?
Yeah, this back and forth, Joe, really does represent sort of a widening of this tension that we've been seeing, particularly for the last couple of months between Israel and the United States. We know that there had been a high-level meeting planned with a delegation coming from Israel to Washington to meet here in D.C. And once the Israeli prime minister posted that video on Tuesday criticizing the Biden administration for slowing this delivery of weapons and ammunition, as the prime minister said, that meeting was postponed, according to officials here in D.C. It wasn't canceled, as some reports had suggested. It was postponed. And then we still saw just yesterday both Secretary of State Tony Blinken and the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan held meetings, separate meetings, with two high-ranking Israeli officials who they've been meeting with regularly to talk about, we learned from the readout from Secretary Blinken's meeting, to talk about the ceasefire negotiations, to talk about getting hostages out of Gaza, to talk about surging humanitarian aid into the Palestinian people. And so even though there seem to be all these reports and these nuggets dropped in social media and other places that there's this tension that's creating an inability to get things done, we then turn around and still have these meetings happening as they have been over the last several months, Joe.
So, Aaron, remind us, when it cocomes to these weapons, why is this one shipment being held, and have any of the concerns been addressed by either party?
So we're talking about these 2,000-pound bombs. The Biden administration, through Secretary Blinken and others, have said that the normal flow of weapons is still happening, with the exception of these, I think it was about 3,500 of these massive bombs that the administration decided back in May to pause, to put a hold on. And the secretary reaffirmed earlier this week that the U.S. is reviewing the use of such munitions because there were concerns about those bombs being used in Gaza in places where there were dense groups of civilians who might be harmed by these large bombs that are not as accurate and not as precise as some other smaller munitions might be, Joe.
All right, Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, thank you so much. Now to a different kind of battle, the digital battle in the race for the White House. The Biden campaign is now denouncing what it calls cheap fakes. Well, the Trump team has its own gripes. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez takes us through this new age battlefield.
The video went viral faster than usual. President Biden at the G7 summit in Italy, surrounded by world leaders, appearing to wander off before being pulled back to the group by the Italian prime minister. In reality, another camera angle showed the president was actually trying to greet skydivers who just finished a demonstration. But the Republican National Committee and conservative media quickly amplified the first angle, falsely claiming the president was meandering. The Biden campaign is calling it a, quote, cheap fake.
What is a cheap fake?
Cheap fakes are these, deceptively edited videos, and they're a huge part of Donald Trump's campaign strategy.
Rob Flaherty is Biden's deputy campaign manager, who's overseeing the escalating digital war and slamming the Trump campaign, saying it's increasingly taking videos out of context.
We have to be more aggressive about monitoring, about intervening, about taking action against it, because it is just going to be such a centerpiece of how he's communicating.
That G7 video is among a string of clips that some Republicans say raises concerns about President Biden's age and abilities. The Trump campaign is arguing there's nothing wrong with highlighting videos that are not digitally altered, like this clip of President Biden standing still for several seconds on stage at a Hollywood fundraiser until former President Obama leads him off stage. And another where he also stood still as people danced around him during a Juneteenth celebration. The White House says the president did not freeze in these incidents, but was enjoying the moments. The Trump team telling us
the Biden campaign is trying to convince the American public not to believe their own eyes. We are simply posting these videos for the world to see and to come to their own conclusion on, which the American public has.
The Trump campaign argues the Biden team has taken the former president's words out of context.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
By claiming that comment referred to political violence instead of economic pain.
Then he said if he loses, it's going to be a bloodbath.
It's called the bloodbath hoax, taking my words completely out of context.
There's always been misinformation during campaigns, but this election cycle, cyber experts expect much more of it, including AI-generated deepfakes. Current and former officials tell NBC News that the FBI and Department of Homeland Security have no firm plan to alert the public about deepfakes or other false information during the 2024 election, unless it's clearly coming from a foreign actor and poses a sufficiently grave threat. A digital battlefield raising questions about free speech, censorship, and partisan politics. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, Wilmington, Delaware.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.